Is the Surface Duo 2 a big step up over Microsoft's first dual-screen phone? Stay tuned as we find out. Welcome back. At TechAutos, we do reviews of the latest tech gadgets and automotive products. If you're new to our channel, consider subscribing. Today we're taking a first look at the new Microsoft Surface Duo 2 through a retail demo. You can order the Surface Duo 2 today, see the links in the description below. The Surface Duo 2 is a dual-screen foldable Android smartphone that follows the same formula as the first Surface Duo, but with substantial upgrades. The Duo 2 has a Qualcomm Snapdragon 888 processor instead of the original's 855, 8 gigs of RAM instead of 6, support for 5G cellular and Wi-Fi 6, a 90Hz refresh rate for its screens instead of 60Hz, a 25% larger battery, an all-new triple sensor rear camera array, faster charging up from 18 watts to 23 watts over USB-C, NFC support, stereo speakers, revised hinges, inward curved screens, and more. So on paper, the Duo 2 meets most basic parameters for a 2021 flagship Android phone. What's it like in person though? The first thing we notice is, of course, that in addition to white, there's also a new black color available, which Microsoft calls Obsidian. It's an attractive finish, but it's a tremendous fingerprint magnet. So if the white version is anything like the first gen Duo, which only came in white, we'd probably opt for that one for fingerprint reasons alone. All four faces of the device are still glass, and the sides are still plastic, polycarbonate perhaps. At first glance, the Duo 2 looks very similar to the first Duo, except for the new rear camera bump. If we place the phones side by side, however, we start to notice the differences. The Duo 2 is about 1.1 millimeters thicker when folded to accommodate the larger battery, 5G millimeter wave antennas, and other new hardware. Each half is still very thin, but not quite as radically svelte as the original. The side volume and power buttons are also slightly wider, and the fingerprint reader has lost its independence, having been integrated into the power button. Surface Duo weighs 250 grams, which is just slightly more than an iPhone 13 Pro Max. Duo 2 is about 14% heavier at 284 grams. Duo 2 is slightly narrower than the original Duo by 2.4 millimeters when unfolded. That's barely perceptible, but might make it slightly easier to hold one-handed in the long run. Zooming in, we can see there are a bunch of subtle changes in the industrial design. Surface Duo 1 looks like 4 flat panes of glass sandwiching a plastic ringed patty. By contrast, Surface Duo 2 has edges that curve in before meeting the flat sides. From this angle, it almost resembles Nokia's Fabula design language for many of its Lumia Windows phones. This helps reduce the perceived thickness, allows the glass to smoothly flow into the plastic sides, and makes for a more refined feel in hand as there's no flat glass edge pushing into your hand. Here we can see the rear camera bump does protrude a fair bit, but that's typical for today's smartphones. The lens on the rear camera bump is actually angled to better accommodate the opposite half of the phone when it's rotated around. Speaking of which, that particular posture is one of a few compromises the camera bump introduces. First, when the screens are folded outwards for one screen mode, they no longer sit flush against each other as on the original Surface Duo. Second, when both screens are unfolded and the Duo 2 is on a table, it will not open completely flat as the Duo 1 can. But both of these are less of a problem in person than they might seem otherwise. Microsoft has revised the display hinges on the Duo 2. Duo 1 already had some really impressive hinges. Duo 2s feel even smoother and slightly weightier in their movement. The hinges are also wider than before, not just because each half of the body is thicker, but also because the gap between the two halves of the phone is slightly wider. However, the screens are curved on the inside edges. This enables Microsoft's new glance bar feature, displaying some basic notification information when the Duo 2 is closed. The curved screens also mean that despite the wider air gap, the effective display areas of the two screens are actually closer to each other than in the original Surface Duo with its flat screens. Here, the same site content is spanned across both screens on Duo 1 above and Duo 2 below. slightly less text is eaten by the hinge area on the Duo 2. Specifically, Microsoft says the hinge obscured zone on the Duo 2 is 66 pixels wide from a total display width of 2754 pixels, which is down from 84 pixels obscured from a width of 2784 on Duo 1. That's a reduction of over 20%. Display quality is great, colors are vibrant, and the increased display refresh rate and processing power, along with a new touchscreen digitizer, make for a smoother display and touch experience. One weakness of the original Surface Duo is that its plastic sides and its radically thin body, barely thicker than the USB-C port, mean that cutouts like the USB-C port area are surrounded by very thin plastic on the top and bottom that tends to crack with pressure from charging cables. The Duo 2's design has not really changed on that front, but hopefully the slightly thicker sides have also been internally reinforced for longevity. We could not do any control testing to assess cellular or Wi-Fi reception or speeds. We did notice 2 SIMs listed. This is a single physical nano SIM and a software eSIM. We don't yet know if both SIMs can be active simultaneously, which they could not on the first Duo. Surface Duo 2 ships with Android 11, whereas Surface Duo is currently still on Android 10 as of October 2021. In our brief testing, Duo 2 delivers a more seamless experience, gestures and screen rotations work more reliably, and there are a number of UI changes. The spanning experience, sliding apps from one screen to the other and spread across both, is smoother. You can set particular apps to span across both by default when they're opened. One curious omission is the current inability to expand 16:9 video content to fit the screen, as seen here on YouTube. Moving on to the cameras, like the original, the Surface Duo 2 has a front-facing camera above the right screen. On the original, that has to double as the rear camera. You simply fold the screens to point that camera outwards. Duo 2 gains a new rear camera array with a primary wide-angle, a telephoto, and an ultra-wide lens, along with a time-of-flight 3D depth sensor. There's a new camera app that opens spanned across both screens by default. The camera preview is on the right side, and your last captured photo shows up on the left. The editing UI is also on the left, and there's a new Photos app that integrates with OneDrive. In our brief testing with this demo unit, the imaging experience has certainly improved over the original Surface Duo, but it doesn't yet feel on par with the latest Apple or Samsung flagship phones. Here's an image captured with the original Surface Duo on the left and the Surface Duo 2 on the right. Both are adequate for basic social media posting and such. Duo 2 produced a more detailed image with less muted colors, but the difference in detail, noise, and such is not as stark as one might have expected given the sensor and optics upgrades. Video stability is improved over Duo 1 with the addition of optical image stabilization on the wide and telephoto lenses. But the output is again not 2021 flagship grade. Among other issues, portrait mode did not work reliably, often mistakenly blurring incorrect portions of the image. Hopefully Microsoft can address these image processing issues via a firmware update soon. One thing we were sorely disappointed to find is that Surface Duo 2, like its predecessor, inexplicably lacks certification for Google AR Core. This means that the vast majority of mobile augmented reality apps, or AR features and shopping apps and others, will not work on Surface Duo 2. The Duo 2 is targeting power users, and in an era in which even many budget phones support AR Core, this is an inexcusable shortcoming in our view that we hope Microsoft will address quickly. Overall, Surface Duo 2 is a solid step up from the first Surface Duo. The original Duo is perhaps a purer expression of Microsoft's dual-screen productivity vision. It's unbelievably thin, works great in its intended role, and will hopefully improve further once Microsoft ships Android 11 for it. But the Surface Duo 2 feels like a more practical daily driver smartphone. It does make compromises to the vision, but primarily to address deficiencies in areas where consumers have high expectations from their smartphones, like the camera experience. Microsoft still has some software work to do on that front, but the core OS usage experience is much improved, so we have high hopes for Duo 2's progress if Microsoft supports it with regular updates. Those who primarily want to use their phone for single app content consumption rather than productivity or multitasking might be better served by a single screen foldable like Samsung's Galaxy Z Fold 3, but there is still no other phone like the Surface Duo or Duo 2. These are truly pocketable multitasking beasts, and based on our first impressions of the Duo 2, Microsoft's taken a big step forward towards building an easier beast to live with. See the links in the description below to check out the Surface Duo 2. If you have any questions, leave us a comment below. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and post any comments or questions below. Also, visit our site at techautos.com for more content.